Hey there. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
And
Hello.
thanks for joining, folks, the panel discussion. So, let's first of all greet everyone and thank everyone joining us from across the globe because we have not only local but as well international communities. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And thank you, folks, for joining the talk and the willingness to share your experience on product and growth hacking with our wider community. First of all, let's start with a quick row of introductions for everyone to know us better, and then we'll go to our panel discussion straightly. So for those who don't know, we have Sisian, Simon, and Alina joining us. Sisian is Senior Publisher Sales Manager at Fiverr. Alina is Head of Products at Agile, Clouders, and the co-founder of it. And Simon is Head of Paid Acquisition at Dave. So today our topic is product and growth hacking. We'll be sharing some insight and tips with the wider audience. And I would love to hear to ideas and to experience of all of you because I know that each one of you have worked with both early stage startups ranging from industries such as fintech, edtech, cybersecurity, entertainment, and media. And your insights on these topics can be very useful for our founders. So the first thing that I would like to ask folks, actually, I need to give you some space for greeting everyone before we start.
Okay, I go first.
Sure,
Hi,
Alina.
everyone. My name is Alina. I'm super excited to be here, share my experience with you guys, also learn from you guys. Everyone has an experience that we can all learn from each other. So I'm very excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm also very excited to be here. I'm also looking forward to learning a ton from my fellow panelists and interacting with the viewers in the comments.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Very excited to meet you all and have this talk and also learn from my fellow panelists and all the people on the call. And it's bright and early on the West Coast, US. So thanks for having me. And we're still waking up. We're gonna get this going. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. And it's starry in Armenia right now. It's like somewhat closer to the night. And I'm Lilith, Program Manager at Hero Host, and I'm really glad and honored to host each of you. So the first thing that I'd like to start with is what does growth hacking and product growth hacking mean? Why I want to set everything straight up from the beginning, because I've heard different comments that growth hacking for some founders and people is considered same as marketing. So first of all, let's understand what's the difference and what is growth hacking specifically for products. We can go with Sisian first, and I would like to hear to the ideas and comments of each of you folks.
Yeah, I think looking at it from a sales and just general scaling, like going out to the market, growth hacking to me comes off as a little different than growth marketing just because it's not some long thought out strategy that you spent months building and coming up with an execution plan. To me, growth hacking is when you're very scrappy and you're just trying a bunch of different things to see what hits and what doesn't, and hope to build that into your long-term marketing strategy. But it to me comes into play at a very specific time of a company's position in a market and a product life cycle.
Okay,
thanks a lot, Sisian. Alina, any thoughts on this point?
I really like what Sisian said, and I'm going to add to that. I totally agree. If you ask 100 people what growth hacking means, you're going to get 100 different answers because there is no clear definition what it means, right? So I'm going to use some drawing that I use for startups that I work just to explain what I feel, what I think growth hacking is, right? So in any company, if you guys can see this, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so in any company, there is these three areas that you need to work on, which is market, product, and GTM, or go-to-market plan, right? So when I talk about market, it means understanding clearly what your users want, who they are, what your market is, what your users' fears are, frustration, also aspirations, hopes, goals, basically knowing your users very deeply and understanding your market. That's one area, right? The second area is your product. What product you're building, what goes into your product, what feature goes into your product, right? So how you do this comes from the market, understanding your market, right? How you build your product comes from your understanding of the market. And then you also have the GTM, or go to market plan, how you're going to reach to your customers, what your marketing will look like, how your messaging will be. And the combination of that, the middle ground, if you see, this is growth. This the middle, how market, product, and go to market plan work together. The middle ground is the growth. That's what I call growth.
Nice. Thanks a lot. Simon, I believe you'll have some valuable additions in here.
Yeah, I definitely like what Tizian, said first, and then Alina added a nice illustration, and I totally agree. I think to translate it to real life terms, what product hacking is, it's really getting your product early and in front of maybe like a smaller number of people, and understanding what parts of products work, what is your like most sticky aspect of your product, what are the things that make you unique, what are people experiences. And then on the growth marketing side, what you're doing early on at the growth hacking is there a way for me to effectively put this in front of as many people as possible, without breaking the bank? Because we all understand, especially early stage startups, you're working with limited resources. And so there are a lot of different ways of doing it. There's no one playbook. Some people go through social channels. Some people run different promotions, for example. Some people are using influencers, which is very popular nowadays. So there's no universal answer. But I think, to define that product hacking is understanding what it is in your product that works the best, and what are the aspects that you can take with you and improve on. And growth hacking is really understanding, can you get yourself in front of your customers, in front of a lot of customers, and potentially test audience with the limited amount of budgets or resources that you can throw out there.
Okay, thanks a lot. Folks, I have one more question regarding product growth. Now we understand what's growth hacking. And Alina, I'd like to start with a question to you. I know that you have contributed to the product growth and development at companies such as NASA, Snapchat, startups as Pixar. And based on that experience, maybe you can shed light, like, why is it important to concentrate on product growth hacking, and when is it the right timing? When is it important to focus on that? Because your experience is pretty wide range, both early stages, and then like very established companies. So what is the right timing, and why is it essential?
That's a really great question, Lilith. So if you ask me, you as a founder or the leader of the company or the leadership team, you should work for growth from day one till the end of your company. It never ends, right? You always grow. It changes what you do in different stages. If you are a day one startup, you do different things. You try to understand your market, your customers, and then, but let's say you are Series A, you start testing, building, using analytics, and then also interviews, understanding what users want, and then how the market landscape changes. You need to do all that. But let's say if you're a later stage startup, or even if you went public, or you're a bigger company, maybe the way you grow is to acquire other companies. It changes what you do, but you always work on growth from day one till your company dies.
Okay, thanks a lot. And Simon, Sisan, anything from your experience of working and consultancy with startups and companies on this point?
Sure, I could chime in. predominantly my role, I work with a lot of app developers, ranging from a wide, variety of sizes. So we have enterprise size app developers that are the largest in the market, as well as two people who are like, I really want to create this product. In sales, we have a saying, time kills deals. And while I understand that like not everyone is a seller, to Alina's point, my rule of thumb is the sooner the better. There isn't a scenario where you're going to try one thing and crack the code, especially in the tech industry, especially nowadays with access to so many different platforms, so many different tools that you can use to scale your business or find your target audience. You're going to have to do a lot of trial and error, and that is time consuming. So even though you can definitely do it in a way that doesn't break the bank, that is pretty affordable given your company's financials, the experience itself is not something that you can cheat. There are no shortcuts. So it takes time. And so the sooner you start, the more ahead of the game that you will get. And with every single trial that you run on whatever random idea that you can have, you're in turn getting data for it, which will only make the newer ideas more precise, more likely to succeed.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Lilita, before you switch to other question, or Simon, I want to emphasize what Cecilia said. It's really important. She said that it's not this one thing that you do that you hack growth, right? A lot of startups reach me or contact me and say, okay, what is it I can do to grow? What feature I need to add, or how do I change my messaging so all of a sudden I become viral and grow? It's never like that. It never, ever, almost, until you figure out this. This is a puzzle you need to figure out. If you figure out this, you have growth. If not, you're wasting your time, wasting the money you have. So it's really important to focus on the right thing.
Great. Thank you, Alina. And Simon, regarding this question, I know that you have worked at companies such as Zynga, Lyft. Currently, you're at Dave, and you've helped them to not only do first test, but as well grow and establish strategies and frameworks. So during your journey, what were the key takeaways on why and when?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Sisian and Lena. It's never really when. Yeah, you have to start thinking about it right from the get-go. And one thing that you notice is that the questions that you ask from your growth function are really different, and the functions that people perform are really different. At some point, especially early on, some companies try to build things in-house, and a lot of them find out that they don't have the expertise. So when you're starting to do outreach and you are talking to different agencies, you're trying to understand the creative process behind like the ads that you're running, or you're trying to hire the qualified people, you start finding out that it's a really huge landscape with a lot of different moving parts. So the earlier you start getting into it, and the earlier you understand what you want to do, what works, what doesn't for you, is the more progress you're going to make. I've been in situations where I've been brought on as a consultant to run something in-house, just to tell people that you actually need to bring a qualified agency. The people that you're trying to have now and the people you're trying to hire are not going to get it done at this stage of the process. You need something a bit more established. Another way around, I've been in situations where a person went and splurged for the biggest agency they can possibly get, and I said, listen, like, you don't even have the valuable product that you can prove. You cannot market something that's not really marketable. So you learn those things along the way, and the faster you start, the more people you talk to, and the more you build your Rolodex of contacts in this industry. Because again, from the growth perspective, there is a certain playbook. I mean, it's not the same, but there are parts of that playbook that one need to follow. Like, I don't know of any big companies that don't run Facebook ads or Google ads once they get to a certain stage, right? And there's some people in the industry that know how to execute that well. The faster you start learning and reaching out to people that know the people in the industry, the easier it's going to be for you to do this, because you cannot have I can do it myself type of mindset in this environment. There's a lot of people that have been doing it for a long time, and you need to be connected to those people in order to guarantee marketing growth. So that's my main takeaway here, is really like, you gotta start early, you gotta do a lot of research, and you gotta connect to the right people, and you shouldn't be doing it all yourself as a part of leadership or a founder of any company. There are people out there that can help you, but you need to find out how to get access to those people.
Okay, thanks a lot. And interestingly, in the answers of three of you, there was a red line crossing by, which was it's not when, it's always, like having that always in mind. So, okay, if I'm a founder of a company, of a startup, and I always have that in my mind, but I like the capacity, or I like the capabilities and skills. What are the first steps for me to do, and how should I start that product growth hacking journey? We can start maybe from Sisian again.
Yeah, and this is a question that through mentoring a couple startups currently, we've had to answer. And I will say that a common theme that I notice with startups or founders is a lack of awareness of the assets that they truly have. So if you have a product, like even if it's an MVP, or if it's in the market but it just hasn't scaled users yet, like you need to look inward and look at the assets that you actually have. So in terms of like, where do I start from? Even if you have 10 users, look at that and see, where did those 10 users come from? I find that especially in the early days, there is such friction between what we feel should be the answer versus what the data is telling us. Obviously, as we scale and have bigger batches of data, that will bring us to more precise decisions. But even in the early days, even if the numbers are looking bleak, you can still utilize that data and start to follow, kind of like the thread of where are the people coming from. Because they will, one, your early adopters will be more than willing to give you feedback. They are the users that you didn't have to go buy, or the customers that you didn't have to go advertise in front of. So they see something in your product that you clearly also see. So talking to as many people as you can within that initial sphere, whether it's to collect data, gather feedback, and really engaging with them, I feel like is a really good place to start, even if you're a one-man team, because then you can figure out what you need to delegate and what skills you actually have that can own some of the efforts that you have to lead in that initial phase.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I know that Simon and Alina, both of you work with startups and can rely on your experience to answer the question.
Sure. So I have another drawing. So I really like what Cecilia said. You need to talk to your customer. I can't tell you how many startups just forget to do it, ignore, or like they're too shy to go talk to directly to customers. If you ignore that, if you don't do that step, it's going to be very hard, because like I said, marketing, understanding your market is really important, right? So what Cician said was understanding, talking to your users. So what I add to that is building the ideal customer profile, right? Who's your ideal customer? What do they feel when it comes to your product? How do they engage with your product? What problem you're trying to solve for them, right? And then go deeper, like what are their fears? If you say, oh, I have this product, what kind of fear do they have using that product? Or what frustrates them? What motivates them? What are their goals in life that they want to achieve, and your product can help with them, right? You need to totally understand that. That's the number one thing that that startups need to focus on.
Thanks a lot. Simon, comments here.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Alina said, and I think one thing that really resonated with what Sisian said was that your early adopters are people that are indeed very enthusiastic about your product. They're going to give you great feedback, and those are the people that will drive your product features, adoption, and things that you can learn, and things that you will learn and take away from you. And so, to add to that, actually, this is a really good point, which brings me to early on, and I think this is like I'll give you practical tips on growth hacking and like what that means for founders, and how do you translate that into actually like acquiring users. I think before you start, go out and start spending money, one of the things you want to focus on is building some kind of an organic acquisition, and that is to start getting your social network out. Maybe you have your product Twitter, maybe you have even your TikTok. I mean, it depends, right? It depends on the medium, how comfortable you are. This should allow you to engage and acquire people that are really enthusiastic about your product and kind of get the word out, right? That's one thing. I would say I would really advocate for running some of the social networks yourself and have like a higher engagement with users. It's very, very, very validating for a user, especially an early adopter, to hear or get a DM from a founder asking them about the feedback. I've seen this being done on platforms like Product Hunt, and it's a really, really fantastic experience, to get that. Second thing is kind of a look and feel of your product, and I think that's also very important. Even though you're starting out, you want things to look nice and professional. And one thing that I would say is one of the best type of investments that I think is when you have an app, specifically investing in your App Store experience, so ASO. And this is actually a very relatively cheap option on the market. It's a lot cheaper to get ASO person, a growth marketing person. What it does is really like when you have this interaction and you're asking people to try out your product, and they land on your product page in App Store or Google Play, and they see something that's nice, professional, engaging, it really allows them to interact with the product and download. A lot of times, early stage companies don't invest into that, and so you end up going to App Store, you're looking at something, you can't quite really figure out what does it do, what are those screenshots, like what am I signing myself to, why am I installing this? So I think those are kind of my two early growth hacks. One is social presence, and that's free. You really don't have to pay anyone. And then ASO, some of that could be free as well. Screenshots you can submit yourself, but then find the person, pay that person, and get this to look nice and professional. And that's going to allow you to drive those early adopters and improve on the product experience and communication.
I'm going to unmute just to really harpen on Simon's point about App Store optimization, specifically because I work with thousands of app developers, and it makes the world's difference. And at the end of the day, even if you don't see the value of doing it for your users, Google and Apple will never push something that doesn't look professional. So if you want to get lucky and have Google or Apple feature you and you'll get millions and millions of downloads in a week, your App Store presence has to be polished. And oftentimes that, again, doesn't take a ton of work, at least just to make the page look nice. You have everything that you need internally. It's just a matter of taking internal communication points and trimming them down to make sure that a user in the noisy space of apps will be able to understand what it is that you're trying to give them as an experience.
Folks, thanks a lot for the handy comments and tips. How I want to refer to them, from startup founders, while working with those founders, I get such question and an issue that I have the tips, I know what I should do, but there is a closed cycle that they go within it. I know what to do. I like capacity. I like expertise, seniority. They know what to do. They can't execute that. And it is closed because that startup, they lack the expertise. I think you lost me. Should I repeat, or it's fine?
Yeah, you're breaking up, but I got what you were saying.
Is it fine now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so within this closed cycle, they circumvent all the time. Capacity, expertise, lack of resources. So these are the challenges that these founders, the companies face. And what obstacles come to your mind, and how would you recommend overcoming them?
I have an answer, but I feel like sometimes it comes off a little bit harsh. There is a huge difference between challenges and excuses. And oftentimes, the list of excuses that I get are completely rooted in fear, which is totally valid, because especially as a founder, or if you are an early employee of a company, you've been there through the thick of it. You have been there for the long nights. You have been there for when you back out your hourly rate or whatever, you're like, oh my God, I am giving blood, sweat, and tears to this. So it could be a very daunting thing to execute or even get the ball rolling, because that's like where you kind of lose a good amount of control because you're opening yourself up for the world to judge. So I think like the first thing is to actually realize what is a true challenge that you have to find workarounds or solutions to, and what is an excuse or a fear that you're placing in your own way. Because 9 out of 10 times, if you have a single idea, you can execute it without someone getting in the way, because we live in a digital world. Like, luckily, we have access to these platforms that give everyone a voice. So it's just a matter of trying things out. And so, for example, to Simon's point earlier about that social media presence, if you're the founder of a company and you go to Twitter or you go to Reddit to find certain types of information, stay true to yourself, stay true to the brand and the community that has encouraged some of these things, and start from there. Like, start from where you're comfortable and then plan to, expand and go to different channels. But I think the number one thing that I find in terms of obstacles is feelings versus reality. And again, it does not mean that it's not valid, but just, the first step is acceptance. So just accepting that, like, maybe this isn't a challenge. And thinking, what if I were to like post all these silly TikToks? I mean, like, look at Duolingo, like, their TikTok has taken off. I'm sure there was a point in time where that social media team was like, we're a very prominent app. We have such a strong brand name. And they just went for it, but it's scary. But if if you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you just have to do it. You just have to like kind of like throw your hands up and jump.
Yeah. Agree about fear, like controlling and dominating that and limiting us. Other than that, Alina, I noticed you unmuted, so I'm going to direct this to you. Other than the fear limiting us, any other obstacles that you have seen while working with companies, with founders or teams?
Unfortunately, Lilith, I have to go back to what CCN said because it's so important. It's most of the problem that I see. For example, I work with this couple of startups. So, and I say, so you're building this feature. Have you talked to the 15 customers that you have? What do they say? They're like, oh no, I'm still building this, a few more features, upgrading my website, doing this and doing that. I'm like, no, how do you know what to put there? How do you know what features to build? You haven't even talked to your customers. It's the fear. They're so scared. They're hiding behind this laptop computer, or they're in their office, and then they're imagining things like, oh, I think the customers would want this. But how did you know? It was about like 10 years ago, there was this lean startup movement. Probably you guys remember. About 10 years ago, I went to this conference. Everyone was wearing this T-shirt that was saying, "Get out of the building, go out of your building and talk to people. You need to see how they feel, how they react. If you look at only the analytics of the data that you have, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get people's feelings, people's frustration, hopes. You're just going to get data, and data just tells you what happened. Did they click here or they didn't? But the rest of it, you're making up stories. Like, I think the users didn't click here because of this, but you don't know. You're just guessing, right? If you're a small company, if you're a startup, the easiest thing is just to talk to your users, right? I know a lot of people don't do it. It's scary. They don't want that kind of like in case users say, I don't like your product, or they're kind of scared of something. So I encourage them to do that, because if you don't do that, later down the road, you're going to suffer from not having this data.
Thanks a lot, and would love to hear any additions that Simon would have.
Yeah, I have an example. I work with this a very prominent app, and I was consulting for them. And the director of engineering was running ads, and he was working, I want to say, about 100 hours a week. And he was super involved with every single thing. And even when I came on board, he had really hard time letting go. That he built it from scratch, and an example here is, once I took over, I brought the agency on board and they start running ads, and I think he went back to engineering and he was the happiest person ever, even though at first had a really hard time letting go. So there's different founders. Some founders they think they're CMOs as well. Actually, I work with some people in the companies that were public, where like a CEO thinks he's a CMO still up to this point. But the example here is to say that, to be honest with you, in Lilith, you touched on this too, expertise. Always trust people that have expertise in the field that you don't have, right? And that's one of the things that I think is a huge journey, is that especially founders early on try to get way too involved in marketing, understand how every single thing works. You'll learn it or you'll figure it out as you go. But in order for you to get to a certain point, you need to bring in the right people. Now, that is where you actually build your expertise. Your expertise is not understanding how the platform works. Your expertise is actually, where are the right people? Who are the right people? How do I find them? Do I go to talks like this and I like someone and I say, hey, let's work with you? Do I go to Hero House and I say, I need some help? Can I get people like that? So I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway here. The biggest obstacle is usually the leadership / founders themselves. You need to put your ego aside. You need to understand, like, I need this function to work well, and in order for this function to work well, I need to have a game plan. Do I want to hire? Do I want to bring someone in? What am I comfortable paying? I've talked to a friend of mine the other week, and he's doing something in fintech, and he got sent the contract, and he asked me, like, is this industry standard? I said, don't negotiate now. Let those people run. Prove that they can do it for you. Negotiate later. You're not saving a lot of money at this point. So that's the thing. Like, get in there, get the right people in place, get your marketing worked out first, at least at first stages. Build some infrastructure through getting smart people on board, and then you're in a good place to take a step back and reevaluate. But at first, of course, you gotta launch and you gotta get some scale. So, don't be a blocker. If you're a founder, don't be a blocker. Enable your growth by bringing the right people.
Lily, oh, sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add. It's very relevant. I have this other drawing. I wanna dig into this. So the job of the founder or startup founder, or like if you're the CEO or CPO, is to figure out this puzzle, right? That's your biggest obstacle in growing your business, right? So what it means is, this is the growth machine, right? So it means building awareness, some sort of marketing, like Simon and Cician said, and then from there, how you're going to acquire user, working on your acquisition. So this part is mostly marketing, right? And then from there, you want to bring users to try your product, right? Once they try the product, then your product comes here. So you want to activate them meaning that they try your product, they're like, oh, I get it, this solves my problem, this product understands me, right? And from there, how to engage them. You engage them, you activate them, and the result is that you retain these users, you keep them, right? They come back to your product. So once that happens, naturally you will have referrals. People will talk about your product, will tell their friends, their coworkers, their people in their family, right? So once you have this referral, these people will come back and try your product. So what happens here, you're going to eliminate these two parts, this marketing part, for the second time, because you're not spending money on awareness and acquisition for these people who are coming from referral, right? So you're saving a lot of money here and speeding your growth. So this is the puzzle that a startup founder needs to figure out, not the product that you're building, not marketing, but the combination of all of that.
No, thanks a lot for this visual of the growth machine. And there was one interesting idea that I heard about the industry standards. And I want to understand and direct the question, if this growth machine, product growth and growth hacking, the same for all the industries. We have experience here of working with companies from cybersecurity, media and entertainment, fintech, edtech, health tech. So the experience is pretty wide. And I want to understand if it's a universal language or it differs for the industries and founders and companies?
In my opinion, it definitely differs. For example, if you are a sales-oriented company, your growth comes from selling to bigger enterprise. You're not going to spend a lot of money on acquisition and awareness, but you will have a big sales team, right? So this is mostly for consumer-facing products. If you have a sales team, this part will be not replaced, but you will also have a sales team right here up here.
I think the pillars are the same, but relevance and importance of those pillars change. One of the easiest ways to understand that is asking yourself, is there a high barrier of entry to my industry? In the world of apps, there isn't. Like, if you know how to code, you can make an app. There's a very high barrier now to being a viral app, but that's simply because so many people have entered the market, right? It's saturated. Something like cloud computing or cybersecurity, that is very niche. You're not going to really run UA campaigns on Instagram because your end user is a serious person. So odds are they're not going to see an Instagram ad and be like, oh, perfect. You can run those types of ads to get brand awareness, to build a brand presence. But I think the pillars are the same. You definitely have to build awareness. You have to acquire users, whether that's through ads or a sales team. You have to re-engage. You need to activate. Word of mouth and referrals are the stickiest ways to get customers. But depending on how your industry operates and how fast it moves, the relevance of those pillars will be very different.
Thanks a lot about the differences. And referring to that, folks, Simon has been both in mobile gaming and in fintech. I'm referring to Zynga and Dave now. And what about those journey for you, Simon? Were there any differences between the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a huge difference between those two industries. I think gaming gaming is fairly developed. It's been around for a while, and so there's a very universal playbook. If you're a game developer, it's fairly easy to follow the template in terms of the product, in terms of the growth. It's also very global acquisition. You kind of understand what works, what doesn't. You've seen ads from different gaming companies before. Like, you have a point of reference, right? There's been EA, there's been Machine Zone, there's a ton of different Scopely based out of LA, right? There's a lot of great companies that have a certain playbook. Fintech, on the other hand, is so new, and it's also so many entries in the fintech now, and there's very little differentiation. The game, it is what it is. It's really hard to get confused about the game. You know exactly what it does. You know exactly what genre it is. In fintech, I mean, I will challenge people to tell between 5 different companies and the products that they're offering, and they will have really hard time. So when you're marketing for fintech and when you're building a product for fintech, actually awareness of what's being offered is the key a key part of that, because there's so little differentiation between features. So marketing is actually an engine for you to build brand and start differentiating. Where in gaming, marketing is really more of like an acquisition lever. Marketing for gaming, I compare it to either day trading or investing. You really sit there, you crunch your numbers, you say, this is my ROI, this is my spend, here's what I'm going to do in this and this country. For fintechs, it is also similar in a way. Like, all user acquisition is based on the ROI and profitability. How much can you spend, and how much money do you get out of it by like year 1 or year 2 or something like that? You send those benchmarks. But nowadays, I think I would compare fintech. I have an interesting comparison that I think will resonate with a lot of people to food delivery. Back 3-4 years ago, you remember when there were 17 or 20 different platforms, and you didn't really know why would one be better than the other. Of course, there was a period of consolidation, which I think what the fintech world is going to go through. So there's going to be maybe like 4 or 5 big players left. But for now, it's really hard to understand what does what. So I think one of the biggest challenges as a marketer in this space is to present your case to the end user and actually differentiate yourself. You find either key features that other people don't have, or you promote your main feature that you do better than the other people in the industry in order to get traction, right? Like you have what is called the me too. That's what other people have, that it's nice to have as well. And then you have your key feature, and you figure out which one of these is your key marketing point. Because again, from the product perspective, it is very, very close. So now marketing becomes the key. And so that's the kind of the biggest difference between the two industries.
Lilith, to Simon's point, I think one thing we haven't addressed yet that's also really important is understanding if you're in a mobile first industry. So for gaming, it is, mobile gaming is so big. It's so much bigger than console now, but there was somewhat of a blueprint from console days. And while a lot of successful companies have broken away from some of the things that were tied to console, there were some best practices that have withstood the test of time. With fintech, I think it's like easy to say, oh yeah, like financial institutions have been around for a while, so it's like an iteration, but it's like, no, because for fintech, it is mobile first. It's the first time that everyone can invest. It's the first time everyone can have access to it. You don't have to drive to Wells Fargo or have a ton of money. So actually knowing that answer, like, am I in a mobile first industry, will also really help with, understanding what kind of marketing or what kind of flow that you need to follow, because there will be parts of it where you can crutch. If you're not mobile first, you can crutch to the original industry or the original channel of, distribution, versus if you are mobile first, it's very different because your whole audience is on a phone. So that kind of like changes the different channels that you can utilize.
Definitely. Thank you, Sisi. And when we were talking about this discussion earlier, you brought up a very interesting point. You told that at the beginning of their journeys, teams and people working on growth hacking strategies, they face challenges because they are not considered, I don't know, sometimes solid by the other team members and stuff. So what challenges do the product growth teams face and can face across different departments? And how can they overcome them? I really like this point because sometimes these actions and these tips, strategies are undervalued, but they are at the core of the growth and accelerated growth actually for the startups.
I don't know if that was directly asked to me, but I'll say this. I'm a seller. So between product, HR, engineering, basically every other team, I'm the villain, right? Because I'm the one who's like, this is what the market needs. And product's like, well, you don't know how to code a single line, so get out of here. And to Simon's point, I crack up so hard when I meet a CEO who's also the CMO and the CPO. So one, I was told this 2 years ago, and it made my relationship with product and tech teams so much better. Assume positive intent, okay? Because you will disagree or you will have such an emotional reaction to everything another team suggests. But assume positive intent. You guys are all working for the same team. And ever since I started doing that, I found myself being more open and having a higher tolerance to ideas that I typically wouldn't. Depending on the size of the company, also just keeping in mind what the person that you're talking to is measured their success on. I'm in sales. My job is to bring revenue, right? So if a product person or an engineering person is talking to me about something that is like on a roadmap 2 years from now, that's wonderful. But like, we don't even know where the market is in 2 years, right? I'm operating off of revenue. And vice versa. Like if I'm going to someone in tech and I'm like, I need this, but their performance is measured off of how many of the deliverables they committed to at the beginning of the quarter they actually rolled out, that will help me position things differently. So assume positive intent, and rather than ask or demand for things, deliver a solution. So if I want a feature that's not on the roadmap, right? But I know or have some sort of data that could be like, hey, like I checked our app store reviews and a lot of users are asking for this. And if we do this, like, like rather than be like, I want this, like deliver the value of why that's important. And just trust each other. At the end of the day, you're all working for the same team. Like no one wins if the company doesn't succeed. And kind of like we talk about it in management and leadership, really setting that culture, like putting your ego aside, and it all starts from the top. If you have leadership that can turn around and say, I don't know this, like I'm not an expert in this, odds are it'll trickle down and the rest of the teams will be more comfortable saying that. But if you have a leadership that's a little toxic, who's like, I'm the man, I deliver all the results, odds are you're going to get some political conversations in the middle that don't necessarily drive value or progress.
Thanks a lot. And so, Alina, okay.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree what Cecian said. I experienced a lot of what you said firsthand, so I know what you mean. So the biggest challenge comes when the leadership team, again, back to this, does not know that they're solving this puzzle together, right? If one person is, for example, if the CEO is trying to do job of the product, job of the CMO, or other leaders try to compete to see who can get the lead, is going to mess up this puzzle, right? It has to be a lot of collaboration. It starts from the top, from the CEO, from the leadership team. And if they're not aligned, if they're not collaborative, the rest of the company is just going to be a mess.
Great.
I'll chime in here. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've learned over time is that people don't understand that marketing is actually very growth marketing is actually very technical. And so what I mean by that, and not to scare anyone away, once you at scale, it becomes very technical. And so when product comes in, a lot of times, and we had those discussions internally, even at Dave, where I don't always think that some other teams understand that what they're doing has a lot of impact on marketing. So when you are changing onboarding flow for your product, when you're changing how people are interacting with the product, that actually has a huge impact on marketing, because we have to track all of those things. We have to track all of those events on the back end. So we've run into situations where if marketing isn't not an afterthought at the company, but if marketing is not at the table and product is dictating some of the moves, you end up in a situation where marketing is not being able to run efficiently. Vice versa, if marketing is siloed from product, you're promoting certain messaging, you're promoting certain user experience, and that user experience doesn't match with what the product actually offering, that is a disaster in the making. If your app says something as easy as doing this, you can do this in 60 seconds, you onboard to the app, you're like, well, they're telling me to wait a couple of days. That doesn't look anything like 60 seconds. You're going to have very angry customers. So what really is the takeaway here is that marketing should be at the table, but then marketing should be also very considerate and not separate from other functions in the company. Marketing products should work together, and like the earlier you establish that within the company, and the fewer egos you have as well, the more productive it's going to get. Because otherwise, if it's product or marketing, if one team is dictating or one team is not talking to another, the people that will suffer are end customers.
Great. Thanks a lot. And if we dive a bit deeper into that, we talked about the issue on the company level, but if we talk on the founder level, who has little experience in it, folks, what would be your tips and advice to founders with little experience in product growth hacking, and what tactics and strategies would you suggest them to use at first to take their product to the next level?
So I'll go first. I have a small tip there. I was watching a Warren Buffett video last night. He's saying like he reads about 10 hours a day, and then if you don't have experience, you have to somehow figure out how to do it, right? Reading helps a lot. There's a lot of really good books, there's a lot of really good videos. Talk to people. You need to figure it out, otherwise the rest of the company is just going to suffer. And then it's going to take longer for you to figure out what to do just because you don't have that experience. It's okay. A lot of founders, a lot of successful founders, let's say 20 years old, that build $1 billion companies don't have experience, but they go and get those expertise, and bring them on board. So it needs to be, a founder needs to be very open-minded, accept that I don't know, and go get the help that they need.
Couldn't agree more on constant learning and the ability to actually say that I don't know something and I need to learn and know that. Thanks a lot. Any advice from Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree with what Alina is saying. That's kind of been my motif through this whole presentation: is you gotta learn, you gotta be open-minded, you gotta bring the right people. In terms of in terms of not knowing, again, if you don't know growth marketing well, you can start with things that you can control, which is like your online presence, which is ASO, is something you can work on. Find easy wins. Easy wins is what will get you going right from the beginning. It also sets a very good tone for the company. If you're able to find a couple of easy wins, your confidence grows. You start thinking, you understand a little bit of different areas, and that's how you grow. That's how you start increasing your user count, and that's how you start increasing adoption. You got to find best bang for the buck early on, especially with limited resources. And sometimes the answers could surprise you. It could be things that you can do in-house that you didn't think would be successful.
Thanks a lot, Sisyan. What about you? Any advice for our founders?
Sure. Being in sales, I've had to kind of always take a step back and ask, how would I react to this as a person? So a couple of things, like to Simon's point, find someone who does it better. I have a degree in finance. I do not do my own financial investing and stuff. I work with someone who does that every single day. And just start somewhere. So if you're like, I'd really love to start running some low budget ads, Google it and let the algorithms take the reign. All it takes is for you to click into a couple links, and the algorithm of Google will just feed you everything you need to know. And kind of like a silly tip, but I've used it so much in the last year, TikTok. People are very willing to share information. Whether it's about how to do social media presence, how to brand, how to create stories that are engaging, how to run ads or set up settings on Facebook. People on TikTok, especially people who are kind of trying to hack the system and scale, are very out there about what they're doing. They're on YouTube, and they're sharing their experience. So even if you don't have the resources or the budget to experience those things, you can spend time learning from professionals that aren't necessarily tied to a TED Talk or a multi-million-dollar publishing deal. They just are very passionate about what they're doing. Obviously, anything on the internet, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it's better than nothing. If you're coming at it from I have no idea what to do, and you can watch a couple of YouTubers or TikTokers who are like, hey, this is how I've learned to hack Reddit forums and really build credibility. I'm sure there's one nugget of information in there that could help you. And it's also, a platform that you're on a lot. So, and then also, again, the algorithm will feed you everything that you are looking for. So kind of use some of the things that have been villainized against us to your advantage.
Couldn't agree more on the community thing, you talked about TikTok, and I think it refers to the community, because for me personally, I had the experience of Discord, and when people are passionate about one topic, they are pretty supportive of each other. Just try asking a question there in a close community or something. They really treat you like a family. They are very supportive and eager to share tips and tactics. So it's very important to be able to use and leverage all the resources available on the internet, because there are people who are ready to help you. Folks, thanks a lot for answering my questions and for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to learn and listen to you. I would suggest taking a couple of questions from the audience before we sum up and before we end the session, because there are some questions that we have pending ones. So let me read. We have one question. It is the following. Are there any strategies or tips that have been applicable in different early stage startups, or all growth strategies are specific to each case and it all comes down to creativity? So I would suggest you to take some time and take the question.
I think I can answer, I can answer parts of that. I don't know if there's like one answer to this question because there's many different ways one can answer that. But I think one of the biggest things on the growth marketing side that I know is understanding your main KPI. And what I mean by that is if you're trying to run any kind of early user acquisition tests, what are you trying to optimize for? Are you trying to, what is your proof of concept? Are you trying to say, I'm able to acquire users cheaply, so I'm optimizing for cost? Are you trying to optimize for user quality and retention? You want to say, well, actually, I can find people online that will use my product and that will monetize really well within this product. Therefore, there's a proof of concept. I'm able to find 50 people that made a purchase. That means that my product is viable and I can spend some money behind it. Are you trying to say, well, I have $1,000 and I'm actually able to acquire 100 people, and that is very cheap relative to what I'm doing? What is your main KPI? Like figuring this out and optimizing towards that is actually a big part of success. Believe it or not, I'm at a company that's a $4 billion company now, and we're still arguing whether cost per acquisition is the main metric or ROI is the main metric. What are we trying to optimize for? Getting the velocity, as many people as possible, or getting the ROI, which is getting a bigger payback on your acquisition cost. And we're 4 years in with a big team with 250 people in the company and still arguing about that KPI. And there's two camps within the company. So really, really understanding early on, what are you trying to optimize for when you're spending your marketing dollars, and what is your proof of concept is super, super important. And either one step further, that is something you go to investors with. Do you go to investors saying, we're able to actually acquire this velocity, just give me a bit more money and I'll be able to get more people on board? Or are you saying, I'm actually able to generate a lot of revenue from my users, and if I get additional money, I'll be able to grow the bottom line a lot faster? Like those are things that are really KPI centric and specific.
Thanks for a specific answer. Anything to be added to the answer, Alina, Sisyan?
No, I totally agree with what Simon said. I think he's also referring to North Star metric, something that you need to know exactly what you're optimizing for. Yeah, that's true. One example is that, again, going back to this, I see a lot of marketing teams that they optimize for acquisition and awareness. They're like, okay, we're done. We are a successful team, right? And they bring all kinds of users to the product, but they're not the right users, right? They go to, for example, TikTok or Snapchat, they bring users, but the market that they're serving is not even part of Snapchat. So they bring users in, and then those users, they're going to get disappointed and leave the product, right? But the marketing team is like, we are successful. We brought the acquisition cost down. We have lots of users we bring a lot of users. Now it's the job of the product to solve the problem, which is not right, right?
Thanks a lot. If no additions, we can jump to the next question. Here is it. The person is showing agreement with working hard on SEO. And what tips do you have for that?
Sorry, my tip is pretty small. For me, if you work on ASO or SEO or any other marketing activity, my tip from the product perspective is that it has to be real. Don't go build a shinier picture of the product, because people will come as soon as they see the product does not match what you promised. They're going to leave and never come back. So that's really important to work with the product, with the rest of the company, to promise something that you can deliver, not more than that.
Yeah, I think I can jump in here and build on what Alina is saying. I think one of the coolest things about ASO is that it's not free format, but it kind of is. And so uh, one of the best things you can do on ASO is actually have your first slide as a video, especially a video that's showcasing your product. So you have a really good match with what you're trying to, what you're convincing users to install and download. You almost have your like intro 101 to your product, but then it also drives the conversions. We have a video instead of the static image as your first ASO impression. It actually improves the conversion rates by up to 30%. And then you, on top of that, you're also able to give users a taste of like the product experience early on just through your app store. This is best of both worlds.
I'll just also add really quickly, engage with user reviews, positive and negative. The ratings will kill you if you don't address them. All it takes is a couple like frequent, pesky users coming in and giving you negative reviews. It's two-pronged. Number one, for optimization purposes. Number two, to Alina's earlier point, listen to them. If you roll out an update and you get a flood of negative reviews, actually read them, acknowledge them, thank them for their feedback, and also for the positive, because that will help you build out your roadmap. The second thing that I'll say, and I always get pushback from the developers I work with, is they are so keen on like not rolling out a ton of updates. That world has changed, especially with all the compliance for OS updates. Every app rolls out like the biggest apps roll out 3 to 4 weeks. Put notes on what the update was, even if it's minor bug fixes. Put it out there. And two, like kind of think about it from your perspective. Like when I'm vetting to work with apps, if I see that their last update was like 9 months ago, in my head, I'm like, oh, I guess they're like kind of put this on the back burner. Whereas if I see monthly updates, that registers to me as a company that's constantly working on their product. So don't be shy about updating your app. If you have a roadmap and you can roll it out in 3 parts, don't wait until you have all of it and do it at the end of the 3-month mark. Do it every month and be transparent. Put what you changed. Even if something's kind of like in a beta period, like you can mark that. And that kind of ties into what Alina said earlier about paint a clear picture, a genuine picture of what it is that the user can expect.
Thanks a lot. And we just got one more question. Let's not leave it unanswered. So the question is it a must to hire a growth manager or product manager, and the leadership team can handle it?
I go first. If you are a small startup in very, very early stages and you have some experience with building product, I don't think having a product manager, because a product manager manages a product, right? You don't have to have that in the early stages. It becomes handy when the company becomes bigger, communication between teams gets more complicated, more alignment needs to be built. But in early stages, it's very easy. You need quick iterations. So if you have a really good designer and engineers and founder, that's all you need.
I agree with Alina. If you want to hire a growth manager because it makes you feel better when you sleep at night, you're like, I have a growth manager, but you in reality don't really know what they're doing or can't build out like a solid job description, odds are you don't need them. As things scale, as your marketing team scales, monetization scales, product scales, you're going to need someone who's like has incentive to like for all 3 of them to agree with each other. That's probably a good time. But if you can't come up with like a list of 20 things that will be executed, or like aspects or like strategies that you want to execute, odds are you don't need to hire someone. You can always work with consultants or, ad hoc employment of like, hey, I just need someone to execute this one thing on Facebook for me.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Simon, any additions you might have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at your resources. If you're trying to be a growth manager in-house and you're part of the leadership team and it's taking you 20 hours a week to build your Facebook campaigns, maybe it's not the best use of time. If you can do it in 3, it is probably okay, but then again, if you're doing it in 3 but you're not seeing any results, you might be doing it wrong. So you have to make a really good self-assessment. It's okay trying, but if you try and if it works, then you can definitely bring a consultant later on. But if you're trying, if things are not working and you're getting frustrated again, you can, it's probably not the best use of the time, especially if you're a C-level exec at your startup. You're probably better off bringing someone on board. It just really depends on your own capabilities of doing growth or growth specifically in this role.
Agree. And actually, it's about like optimization of return on investment. And in this case, it's like pretty much your time, which you should maximize the value of it. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. These were all the questions addressed that we had, and we addressed all of them. Thanks for valuable insights. And I'm sure that these comments and tips and strategies are of great help for our founders and the community. Thanks once again for joining us, and I wish you to have a nice day. And thank you also for everyone for staying tuned in, for listening, asking questions, and being active, our online community. Stay tuned in because on December 16th, actually, we have our next Hero Talk on customer experience-led growth organized with Zendesk. And we're looking forward to meeting all of you there. And folks, 3 of you, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for
organizing. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.